Pink Sorry Revolution is the world premiere of a stage adaptation of a book by a journalist called Amina Fontanella Khan about this singular and extraordinary woman, Sampat Pal, who has created one of the world's greatest feminist movements. It's estimated today that there are 400,000 women in her gang. They're an army, not a gang, who are fighting for women's rights in North India and fighting for those rights in... Pink Sorry Revolution is the world premiere of a new play, a new drama about this incredible woman, Sampat Pal, who has created one of the world's greatest current living, vibrant feminist movements. She has an army of 400,000 women in rural India who wear neon pink saris and say, enough is enough. The play is based on a documentary account of the gang, how they came to exist, written by the journalist Amina Fontanella Khan, and part of our process in turning all those facts, all that information, telling a story about a world that probably feels very alien and remote to so many of us, turning that into a really human, exciting, theatrical drama, and really knowing that Sampat Pal is one of the most epic characters you could imagine on stage. This is a woman who was married off at the age of 12, as is common in that part of the world, taught herself how to read and write really basically, taught herself how to sew so she could be economically independent, and who from those impoverished origins in one of the most lawless parts of India, therefore by extension one of the most lawless parts of the world, has achieved this extraordinary impact, has achieved becoming one of the Guardian's 100 most important women in the world, or what have you, and what a thing to imagine that one person can do that. So there's a great character there, and a flawed character, a really problematic, challenging character, a woman who, as we're exploring in the play, as we start to think about how we put her on stage, doesn't always do the right thing, and has achieved extraordinary things, but potentially at great cost to herself. And that's the heart of telling a story. So, what I hope is that people will come and encounter a character unlike any other.
You spent some time with Sampat Pal and you've been out there.
How's that
influence you going into this?
Gosh, yeah, it's a real responsibility. The second you meet somebody, the second you're telling a story about a real human being. And what's been amazing as part of the research and development process of the show was that we received the funding to be able to go out and spend time with her and see her in her home and out on the campaign trail and all of these things. I'm slightly in love with her. She's a force of nature. She's one of the most charismatic, extraordinary, firecracker-ish of human beings you could ever imagine. So of course, that's the complexity as a theatre maker is then digging into that and knowing that we will create a show that does raise questions about whether she always does the right thing. So it's balancing my personal adoration for her with my responsibility to making a great play, because great plays are not about really nice, conventional, boring, steady people. Great plays are about people who are a bit difficult. I think for all that it is a very specific story about this place and this moment in India, and as I say, part of the incredible thing about making the shows that we've been able to be out there to do that research, to be using a really rigorous documentary book as the foundation for all of that information. Although it's that specific, in a kind of amazing way, the second you're that specific about something, it becomes universal, because the issue that sits at the heart of this is, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a protester? What does it mean to say no? What does it mean to say, this is enough? And that's resonant. That's resonant when we see the women's marches all over the world just this year, at a point where a man who's essentially sanctioned sexual violence in his personal life is President of the United States. at a point where we're asking questions here in the UK about our Prime Minister being a difficult woman and all these sorts of things. Female rights, protest, resistance, they're themes that obsess us all right now. We are all living in the shadow of not quite knowing whether our society works for us. That's not just in India, that's right here, that's in Kensington, down the road from here at the National Theatre Studio, it's everywhere. So what I hope is that this very specific story of how that issue is being explored by this amazing woman in India will unlock a wider conversation. I think as a director, something very interesting about the idea of how you present violence, and certainly sexual violence on stage. I personally don't believe that theatre is there to be gratuitous. I think theatre is there to plant images and ideas in an audience's imagination, actually. And the greatest thing you can do when you're making theatre is encourage the audience to use their imagination. That's where something affects you, touches you the most. So in terms of what we're presenting on stage, of course we're not shying away from the reality that the piece, the story is motored by in this place, a very specific rape case that Sampat Pal took up and became obsessed with. So that reality is there. It's certainly not going to be a production in which an audience will see sexual violence enacted on stage. I'm not interested in confronting audiences with that. I'm not interested in asking my actors to delve into that in a rehearsal room, because I think it's not necessary, actually. It's not necessary to raise the issue. I've been very serious in this conversation so far because it's a very serious, real experience. You know, we're right here at the National Theatre Studio, having spent shall I start that again? You asked me the question again.
Yeah, sure. What legacy do you feel they will have, and how do you want audiences to react to that?
I mean, it's an interesting question because, as you'll have heard me say so far, it's a really challenging, raw piece of work about some extraordinary, horrific realities. You know, here we are at the National Theatre Studio, where I've spent a week with some amazing actors diving into that, and, you know, not only been looking at the book, we've been looking at cases happening in India right now, pulling headlines, press stories to kind of go, God, what is this world, this situation? And that's pretty shocking and challenging. That said, Sampat Pal, as I was saying, she's also a dynamo. She's one of the funniest people you'll ever meet. She's a storyteller, she's a play actor, she's a bit like a director herself at times, or a choreographer, in the way she works and deals with people. And she's always the first to make a joke. So I guess it's finding that combination of us all going, wow, this is happening, this is real, and it's not only happening there, it's happening here, and are we talking about that enough, full stop, but also going, well, here's how one pretty amazing kick-ass woman deals with that. So that combination of truth and inspiration, what I'd love is for people to come out and kind of go, I feel like I can take on the world. I think one of the amazing things about the show and how it will feel for audiences on stage as well, I mean, as I say, I've described the kind of political depths of it. It's a show about protest. So our ensemble of 7 actors, with movement and choreography by Akash Adedra, music by the Indian composer Narain Chandavarkar. It's going to be really physical and visceral at points. We're going to see the company in flaming pink saris with huge sticks, and it's going to have that real power. You know, what's also been fascinating in having the opportunity to play a little before we go into proper rehearsals is you sort of go, God, can you give that sense of scale with just 7 actors? Can you actually, you know, as I say, there are now 400,000, and what we've discovered this week is that you really easily can. 7 actors can make a lot of noise. So that kind of stirring rally cry, that's going to be a really fundamental part of the experience. Another really important element of developing the show has been working with the Indian playwright Purva Naresh, an extraordinary feminist political voice from India, which felt so important to kind of go back to India and to go to a woman who is living through those realities and who is so passionate and angry and who does so much social work in her own day-to-day life, and to invite her to kind of say, well, listen, we're telling a story about where you're from. Her family are from the biggest city near to Sampat Pal. She grew up hearing about this woman. To bring her perspective to bear has been thrilling.
Great. We're going to be intercutting some of this stuff with some of the part of the documentary that we made for it last year, including some of the India footage.
Yes.
The first R&D.
Yes.
So if you could just talk a little bit about how doing the R&D and having that show at Curve, and then how what bits, what are you taking from that and what
into this? Yeah. Gosh. I think people often think that you write a play in a few weeks, put it on, and there it is, and it's quite a quick process. By the time Pink Story Revolution makes it to the stage, it will have been in development for close to 2 years, because in a way that's what it takes to drill into an issue this massive, to content this massive, and to find the right way to tell that story. So one of the starting points for this was our research and development process in India, way back at the outset, in December 2016, and December 2015, in point of fact. Yes, must correct myself. So one of the most important parts of the process was our first research phase out in India in December 2015, and going and living with Sampat Pal, going and meeting with extraordinary Indian artists and saying, we've got a sense about what this story means over to us in the UK. What does it mean to artists, people in India as well? And it's amazing to have the opportunity to play in that way and to kind of try lots of different ways of staging things, and to kind of go, is this show going to have a huge amount of choreography and dance, or is it actually going to be more of a kind of naturalistic drama, or is it going to be somewhere in between? And it's that I think kind of weirdly, I think what we really understand that in science, you do loads of research and workshopping and laboratory stuff, and you test ideas, you test products, and you go down new paths, etc. And that's so important for theatre as well. Every great piece of theatre, and I hope Pink Story Revolution will be one of them, has to go on that journey of discovery and exploration, and you find things, you find ideas, you find images that you love. One of the things that we explored really early on was the idea of the pink sari as fabric. In our initial R&D over a year ago, we created this sequence with fans, which was a pink sari blowing around just one woman and her relationship with that, and that being something she was afraid of or something she was comforted by. And it was beautiful, but it won't be in the show, because that kind of image, that language took us into a really kind of dance world of the piece. It took us to something that was very abstract, very metaphorical, and actually what's felt more and more important as we've worked on it is to be really in the present of who these women are, and to be really tied to how they move, how they sing. It's been that kind of process where you find things that you adore, and they'll probably work their way into other shows that I do in years to come.